Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Chatcast. You are tuning in to Episode 6 of Module 3 of the Blueprint for Effortless English. I am your co-host, Ben.
And I am Anna. Welcome back, everyone. We are officially past the halfway point of Module 3. We are deep into the conversational engine, and the momentum we are seeing from this community is just unbelievable.
It really is. Over the last 5 episodes, we have given you the tools to completely transform how you interact with native speakers. You know how to use filler words to sound natural, you know how to navigate the FORD method for small talk, and you know how to agree and disagree politely.
And in our last 2 episodes, we completely flipped the script. We taught you how to pass the microphone by asking open-ended questions using the TED framework, and we showed you how to use active listening and the echo technique to make people feel truly heard.
But today, we have to talk about reality. The reality is that conversations are not always perfectly organized. They are not always polite, turn-based interviews where one person speaks, stops, and then the other person speaks.
Exactly. Real human conversation is messy, it is chaotic, and sometimes you are going to find yourself in a situation where everyone is talking at once, the energy is incredibly high, and you cannot even get a single word into the conversation.
Or you are right in the middle of telling a fantastic story, and someone else suddenly jumps in and completely cuts you off. This happens all the time, and for English learners, it can be absolutely paralyzing. Today, we are talking about navigating interruptions.
Before we give you the exact phrases to survive conversational chaos, we have our usual quick favor to ask. If you are enjoying building this social toolkit with us and you want to support the 50-episode blueprint, please hit that like button and subscribe to the English Chatcast channel.
Your support means the world to us, and it helps push these lessons out to other learners who are tired of feeling invisible in group conversations. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, Ben, we have to start by addressing a massive cultural misunderstanding about interruptions. I see this with my private clients all the time. In many cultures around the world, interrupting someone while they are speaking is considered a massive sign of disrespect.
It is considered incredibly rude. You are taught from a very young age that you must wait for the elder or the speaker to completely finish their thought, pause, and officially hand the floor over to you before you open your mouth.
But in American and British culture, especially in casual social settings, that rule completely goes out the window. If you are at a dinner party or a pub with native English speakers, waiting for a polite pause means you are going to be sitting in silence for the entire night.
The pauses just do not exist. Native speakers treat conversation like a team sport, and specifically, we use a conversational style called cooperative overlap.
Cooperative overlap is a fancy linguistic term, but it basically means we talk over each other to show enthusiasm. If I'm telling a story about a crazy traffic jam, Ben is not going to wait for me to finish. He is going to jump right over my words to agree with me.
I will jump in and say, oh my gosh, the exact same thing happened to me on Interstate 25 yesterday. I am not trying to be rude. I am not trying to steal her story. I am validating her story by matching her energy and adding my own wood to the fire.
But to an English learner, that cooperative overlap feels like an aggressive attack. You think, wow, Ben just cut me off. He must not care about what I am saying. So you quiet down, you yield the floor, and you feel defeated.
You have to fundamentally change how you view interruptions. You have to realize that jumping in is often a sign of deep engagement. If people are interrupting you, it usually means they are excited about the topic you brought up.
So today, we are going to break this down into 2 distinct skills: Skill number 1 is how to politely interrupt someone else when you have something important to add, and skill number 2 is how to defend your own turn to speak when someone else tries to cut you off.
Let us start with skill number 1. How do you jump into a fast-moving river without drowning? If you are in a meeting or a group chat and someone is talking endlessly, how do you insert yourself?
The biggest mistake learners make when trying to interrupt is their volume and their intonation. They usually start with a very quiet, hesitant apology. They whisper, "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt."
If you whisper, "Excuse me," in a loud, passionate group conversation, nobody is going to hear you. Or worse, they will hear you, but their brain will subconsciously categorize your low volume as unimportant, and they will just keep talking over you.
I am not in it to take the money from it.
We use a technique called the double tap. You cannot just throw one phrase out there and hope it works. You have to tap the conversation twice. The first tap gets their attention, and the second tap justifies your interruption.
The best way to execute the first tap is to use the person's name. Hearing our own name is the ultimate psychological trigger. It instantly stops our train of thought.
If Anna is talking, I do not just say, "Excuse me." I say, "Anna," really quickly. Using her name forces her to stop and look at me. Then I deliver the second tap, which is my actual point.
Let us give you the core native phrases for the second tap. The absolute most common one in a casual setting is, "Can I just jump in here for a second?"
Can I just jump in here for a second? Let us break down why that phrase is so brilliant. The word just is acting as a minimizer. It tells the speaker, "Do not worry, I am not going to steal the microphone forever. I am only taking it for a tiny second."
It completely lowers their defensive walls. Another fantastic phrase is, "Sorry to cut you off, but I have to add something to that."
This one is great because you are acknowledging the interruption. You are saying, "Sorry to cut you off," which shows politeness, but then you immediately justify it by saying you have to add something to their brilliant point. It feels collaborative.
If I could just pause you right there for a moment.
That is a total boss move. If I could just pause you right there. It implies that their point is so important that you need to stop the meeting to address it immediately.
You can also use the phrase, "Before we move on from that point, I want to clarify something." This is the perfect interjection when the speaker is talking too fast and you are getting confused. Do not wait for them to finish the entire presentation. Jump in and say, "Before we move on, can we go back to that last number?"
Now let us talk about the physical mechanics of jumping in. You cannot just rely on your voice. You have to use conversational body language. Native speakers signal that they want to speak before they ever open their mouths.
Absolutely. We lean forward in our chairs. We make sudden, direct eye contact with the speaker. Sometimes we even physically raise a hand slightly, not like a student in a classroom, but just a small gesture to catch their peripheral vision.
Or we take a sharp, visible breath in. That sharp inhale is the universal biological signal that someone is preparing their vocal cords to speak. If you watch a debate, you will see people leaning forward and taking sharp breaths right before they interrupt.
You have to combine the physical signal with the vocal double tap. You lean in, take a breath, say their name, and drop your phrase. Then, "Can I just jump in here really quickly?" It is impossible to ignore.
So that is how you launch an offensive interruption. But what about defense? What do you do when you are the one speaking, you are in the middle of a great point, and someone else tries to use the double tap on you?
This is where you have to learn conversational assertiveness. For many learners, the instinct is to immediately stop talking, apologize, and surrender the floor.
But you do not always have to surrender. If you have not finished your thought, you have every right to hold your ground. You just have to know the exact phrases to pause the interrupter without sounding like a jerk.
Just let me finish this thought really quickly.
It is so smooth. Just let me finish this thought really quickly. Notice we are using those minimizing words again. Just and really quickly. You are telling the interrupter, I hear you, I will give you the microphone in a second, but I need to land my airplane first.
Another great defensive phrase is, hold that thought, I am almost done.
Hold that thought is a brilliant idiom. It literally means, take the thought you just had, put it in your pocket, and save it for 30 seconds while I finish my sentence. It is polite, but incredibly firm.
If someone interrupts you with a question that you were already planning to answer, you can defend the floor by saying, I am actually just getting to that.
Yes, I am actually just getting to that. It tells them that their interruption was unnecessary because you were already one step ahead of them. It reestablishes your authority over the story.
But let us talk about the most common scenario. You are speaking, someone interrupts you, and you decide to let them speak. They do their cooperative overlap, they add their little comment, and then they stop.
Now you have a massive problem. The spotlight is sitting in the middle of the table. Your story got derailed. How do you pick up the pieces and get back to what you were saying without making it awkward?
You have to use a conversational bridge. You need a phrase that seamlessly links their interruption back to your original point. The absolute king of these bridges is the phrase, anyway, as I was saying.
Anyway, as I was saying, that phrase is the reset button for any conversation. It validates their interruption, but firmly grabs the steering wheel and pulls the car back onto the main highway.
Let us say I'm telling a story about my vacation, and Ben interrupts me to talk about a restaurant he went to. When he finishes, I smile, nod, and say, yeah, that restaurant is great. Anyway, as I was saying, we finally got to the beach.
It is completely flawless. Nobody is offended, but Anna gets to finish her story. You can also use the phrase, to get back to my original point. This one is slightly more formal, perfect for the office.
Yeah, if the meeting gets sidetracked by a random question, you answer the question and then say, so to get back to the main point, we need to finalize the budget. It shows strong leadership skills.
Another great bridge is, where was I? All right.
That one is very casual and very human. It admits that the interruption successfully distracted you. Where was I? Oh, right, the traffic jam. It invites the listener to help you remember your place in the story.
Let us put all of this theory into practice. Anna and I are going to do a rapid-fire role play. We are going to intentionally have a messy, overlapping conversation where we constantly interrupt each other.
We are going to use the offensive jump-ins, the defensive hold phrases, and the conversational bridges. Pay close attention to how we fight for the microphone without ever sounding angry or rude.
Let us pretend we are trying to decide on a marketing strategy for the podcast. I will start. So, looking at the numbers from last month, I really think we need to double down on our social media clips. The short-form content is driving a massive amount of traffic to the main episodes, so if we just allocate more time to editing those...
Ben, can I just jump in here really quickly?
Hold that thought. Let me just finish this point. If we allocate more time to editing those shorts, I think we will see a huge spike in our subscriber count by December.
I see what you mean, but sorry to cut you off. I actually think focusing on the email newsletter is going to bring us a much higher quality audience. The social media traffic is great, but the newsletter subscribers are the ones who actually...
Wait, actually, before we move on from the social media thing,
Just let me finish this thought, Ben. The newsletter subscribers are the ones who actually engage with the community in the comments.
That is a fair point. The newsletter engagement is super high.
Right. Anyway, as I was saying, if we put our budget into growing the email list, we own that audience completely. We do not have to worry about the algorithm changing.
And scene. That was intense, but that is exactly how high-level native conversations sound in the real world. Let us break down the exact mechanics we just used.
Ben started with a long, continuous point about social media. I wanted to interject, so I used the double tap. I matched his volume, I said his name, and I used a minimizing phrase. I said, "Ben, can I just jump in here really quickly?"
But I was not ready to give up the floor. I wanted to land my airplane. So I deployed a defensive shield. I said, "Hold that thought, let me just finish this point." And then I immediately completed my sentence about the subscriber count.
When he finally finished, I validated his point using the yes but method from episode 3. I said, "I see what you mean." Then I used an offensive interruption phrase, "Sorry to cut you off," and I pivoted to my point about the newsletter.
While Anna was talking about the newsletter, I realized I was not finished talking about social media, so I leaned forward, raised my volume, and used another jump-in phrase. I said, "Wait, actually, before we move on from the social media thing."
But I stood my ground. I hit him with, "Just let me finish this thought, Ben." I finished my sentence about the community comments.
I yielded the floor. I agreed with her point by saying, "That is a fair point."
And once I had his agreement, I used the ultimate bridge to reset my story. I said, "Anyway, as I was saying," and I finished my argument about owning the email audience.
It was a complete battle for the microphone, but it was entirely respectful. We were playing conversational tennis at a professional level, and that is the level of fluency we want all of you to reach.
We want you to stop being terrified of the messy overlap. We want you to stop apologizing every time you accidentally speak at the same time as someone else. Embrace the chaos.
Which brings us to your mission for episode 6. We are going to give you 2 options for your homework this week, depending on how brave you are feeling.
Option 1 is the eavesdrop challenge. If you are not quite ready to start interrupting native speakers yourself, we want you to go observe them. Go sit in a coffee shop or watch a heated debate on YouTube.
Watch a panel discussion where 3 or 4 people are arguing about sports or politics. With a notebook in hand, write down every single phrase they use to interrupt each other or defend their turn. Look for the body language. Look for the sharp inhales.
Option 2 is the jump-in challenge. If you are feeling brave, we want you to actively practice the double tap. In your next group conversation, do not wait for the perfect silent pause.
Joe, can I just jump in here really quickly?
Anyway, what were you saying?
After you complete your chosen challenge, come down into the comments section of this episode. Give us a full field report. Tell us if you watched an argument or if you successfully interrupted someone yourself.
Tell us the exact phrase you used and tell us how the other person reacted. Did they yield the floor to you or did they tell you to hold that thought? We absolutely love reading about your real-world interactions.
You guys are acquiring some serious conversational armor. You know how to start a chat, ask great questions, follow up, disagree, and now you know how to fight for the microphone. The engine is fully upgraded.
But there is one crucial driving skill we have not covered yet. What do you do when the conversation is dying, or when the topic becomes incredibly boring and you need to steer the car in a completely different direction?
That is exactly what we are covering in our next episode. In episode 7, we are going to talk about changing the topic smoothly.
We are going to show you the native cheat codes for pivoting a conversation without giving people social whiplash. We will teach you the exact transitional phrases to escape boring small talk and get to the interesting stuff. You definitely will not want to miss it.
But for today, focus on conversational assertiveness. Practice the double tap. Defend your floor. And remember that a messy conversation is usually a good conversation.
I am Anna.
And I am Ben.
If you feel ready to jump into the conversational chaos today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let us keep mastering the social toolkit together. Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, learning English with us is
A piece of cake. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on the English Chatcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Chatcast. You're tuning in to Episode 7 of Module 3 of the Blueprint for Effortless English. I'm your co-host, Ben.
And I'm Anna. Welcome back, everyone. We're officially in the home stretch of Module 3. The conversational engine is running smoothly, and you guys are driving like absolute pros out there in the real world.
It's incredible to see. In our last episode, we talked about conversational assertiveness. We taught you the double tap, we showed you how to politely interrupt, and we taught you how to defend your turn to speak when someone else tries to cut you off.
you learned how to fight for the microphone, but today we're going to talk about what happens when you actually have the microphone, but you hate the song that's playing.
That's a perfect way to describe it. We've all been trapped in a conversation that's just painfully boring. Maybe you're stuck talking to a coworker about their cat's complex dietary issues for 20 minutes, or you're stuck in a looping, endless conversation about the weather with a neighbor.
You're desperately looking for an exit. You want to talk about something, literally anything else. But you don't want to be rude, and you definitely don't want to give the other person social whiplash.
Social whiplash. I love that term. Social whiplash happens when you change the topic so aggressively and suddenly that it physically confuses the other person. You leave their brain spinning.
Right. Imagine someone is deeply talking about their favorite spreadsheet software, and you just suddenly say, "So, did you watch the football game last night?"
It's a total car crash. It completely breaks the conversational trust we built in episode 2. The other person instantly knows that you weren't listening to them at all, and that you were just waiting for your turn to speak.
So today, we're going to teach you the art of the pivot. Today's topic is changing the topic smoothly. We're going to give you the native cheat codes for steering the conversation exactly where you want it to go without anyone even realizing you're doing it.
Before we teach you how to escape a boring conversation, we have our usual quick favor to ask. If you're getting value out of this 50-episode blueprint and you're excited to upgrade your social toolkit, please hit that like button and subscribe to the English Chatcast channel.
It's the absolute best way to support the podcast, and it helps the algorithm push these lessons to other English learners who are currently stuck in awkward conversations. Thank you so much for your support.
Let's start with the most elegant way to change a topic. We call this the natural bridge. A natural bridge is when you take one tiny detail from the current boring topic and you use it as a stepping stone to cross over into a completely new, exciting topic.
This requires active listening. You can't just zone out and plan your escape. You have to listen closely to their boring story and hunt for a key word. You're hunting for a noun, a location, or an emotion that you can hijack.
Let's say your coworker is complaining about how terrible the traffic was on their commute this morning. They're talking about highway construction, brake lights, and terrible drivers. It's a very negative, dull topic.
You definitely don't want to talk about traffic for 10 minutes. So you listen for a key word. They mentioned that they were listening to a podcast while stuck in their car. Podcast is your golden key word.
You validate their frustration first, exactly like we learned in episode 5. You say, "Wow, that sounds like a miserable commute, but at least you had a podcast. What were you listening to?"
Boom! You just built a bridge. You seamlessly transitioned the topic from boring highway construction to their taste in media and entertainment.
And from there, the conversation opens up entirely. They tell you they were listening to a true crime podcast. You ask if they watch true crime documentaries on Netflix. Suddenly, you're having a deep, engaging conversation about movies and television.
Let's do another example of a natural bridge. Suppose someone is talking endlessly about the rain. It's been raining all week, their basement is flooding, the yard is a mess. It's another negative loop.
You listen for the key word. You say, "Yeah, this rain is absolutely brutal. It actually makes me really miss the summer. Do you have any warm vacations planned for this year to escape the weather?"
You just pivoted from the weather to the D in the FORD method, dreams and travel. You use the contrast of the rain to build a bridge to a much happier, more engaging topic.
The natural bridge is the smoothest transition because the other person thinks the conversation naturally evolved. They don't feel like they were cut off. They feel like you're deeply engaged in their narrative.
But sometimes you can't find a natural bridge. Sometimes the topic is so incredibly boring or specific that there are absolutely no usable keywords to hijack.
When that happens, you have to use a soft pivot phrase. These are established English idioms that signal to the listener that the topic is about to shift, that they do it in a very polite, gentle way.
The absolute king of all soft pivot phrases is speaking of which.
Speaking of which, this is a brilliant phrase. It implies that whatever you're about to say is somehow connected to what they just said, even if the connection is incredibly weak.
Exactly! You can use speaking of which to link almost anything. Let's say your friend is talking about buying a new pair of running shoes. You want to talk about an upcoming birthday party.
Oh, nice. Those shoes look super comfortable. Speaking of which, are you wearing those to Sarah's party on Friday?
You just completely changed the trajectory of the conversation from footwear to weekend social plans. But the phrase, speaking of which, made it feel like a logical progression.
Another fantastic soft pivot is that reminds me. This one is highly native. It tells the other person that their story successfully triggered a memory in your brain.
Even if it didn't actually trigger a memory, it's a great excuse to change the subject. Someone is talking about their annoying landlord. You say, "Oh man, dealing with landlords is the worst. That reminds me, I need to ask you about that plumber you hired last month."
You validated their pain, and then you used "that reminds me" to pivot to your own pressing question. It's flawless.
We also use the phrase, funny you should mention that. This is a very charismatic transition. It creates a sense of coincidence and shared experience.
If someone brings up a topic that's remotely related to what you want to talk about, you jump on it. They say, "I'm so tired of eating chicken and rice for dinner." You say, "Funny you should mention food. I was actually just looking for a new sushi restaurant to try this weekend."
Funny you should mention that. Speaking of which, that reminds me. These are your transitional cushions. They lubricate the conversational engine so you can switch gears without grinding the clutch.
But what if you need to make a complete 90-degree turn? What if there's absolutely no connection between the current topic and the topic you urgently need to bring up?
This happens a lot in business settings, or when you suddenly remember something important that you have to tell your friend before you forget. You have to use a hard pivot.
A hard pivot is a phrase that explicitly announces you're changing the subject. You're holding up a giant neon sign that says, "Warning, new topic approaching."
Because it's so direct, you have to use very specific, polite language to avoid sounding rude. The most common hard pivot is not to change the subject, but.
Not to change the subject, but it's literally an apology for doing exactly what you're about to do. It's like saying, "with all due respect," right before you say something disrespectful.
Right. You say, yeah, that spreadsheet sounds really complicated. Not to change the subject, but did you ever get that email from the marketing department?
It's abrupt, but the apology softens it just enough to be socially acceptable. Another great hard pivot is on a completely unrelated note.
I use this one all the time with my friends. On a completely unrelated note, it's very honest. You're admitting that your brain just jumped tracks entirely.
You're talking about the weather and suddenly you say, yeah, it's super cold today. On a completely unrelated note, did you see the season finale of that show last night?
You can also use the phrase, before I forget. This is the ultimate excuse for a hard pivot. It blames your bad memory instead of blaming their boring topic.
Oh, I love that one. Someone is talking about their dog's vet appointment. You listen, you validate, and then you say, wow, I really hope the dog feels better soon. Hey, before I forget, I need to ask you if you're free for lunch next Tuesday.
It creates a sense of urgency. You had to interrupt the dog story because your brain was about to lose an important piece of data. People are very forgiving of the before I forget pivot.
And if you're taking control of a meeting or bringing a group of people back to focus, you use the phrase moving on or shifting gears for a second.
Shifting gears is a fantastic business idiom. You say, okay, that covers the budget report. Shifting gears for a second, let's talk about the upcoming conference in Chicago.
It's authoritative. It tells the room that the previous topic is officially closed and it's time to focus on the next item on the agenda.
Okay, so we've covered the natural bridge, the soft pivot, and the hard pivot. But there's one more technique, and it's a lifesaver when you're completely trapped in a dead-end conversation with an awkward silence. We call it the environmental pivot.
We touched on this briefly in our small talk episode. The environmental pivot is when you use something in your immediate physical surroundings to spark a brand new topic of conversation.
Let's say the conversation has completely died. You're standing in the kitchen at a party, you talked about work, you talked about the weather, and now you're both just staring at your shoes in silence.
Instead of panicking, you look up and find an object. You look at the food. You look at the artwork on the wall. You listen to the music playing in the background, and you use it to restart the engine.
Wow, that guacamole looks incredible. Have you tried it yet?
Or you listen to the speakers and say, I love this song. Do you know what band this is?
You're using the physical world as a conversational defibrillator. You're shocking the conversation back to life.
The environmental pivot is brilliant because it's low pressure. You aren't asking a deep, personal question. You're just sharing an observation about the shared space you're both standing in.
You can even use the other person's clothing or accessories as an environmental pivot. Genuine compliments are the absolute best way to change a dying topic.
Yes, if the conversation is dying, just compliment them. I have to say, I absolutely love that watch you're wearing. Where did you get it?
Or, those glasses look great on you. A genuine compliment completely resets the energy of the interaction. It makes the other person feel good, and it instantly opens up a new avenue of conversation about shopping, style, or gifts.
Let's put all of these transitions to the test. Anna and I are going to do 2 short role plays. The first role play is going to demonstrate the dreaded social whiplash. I'm going to change the topic abruptly and rudely.
And notice how uncomfortable it makes the interaction feel. I'll start by talking about a stressful topic.
Ready.
So, I took my car to the mechanic yesterday because the brakes were making this weird squeaking noise. And he told me that I need to replace the entire rotor system, which is going to cost like $800.
Did you watch the basketball game last night?
No, I didn't. Like I was saying, $800 is just way out of my budget right now.
Yeah, I'm starving. You want to go get food?
And scene. That was physically painful to participate in.
It felt awful even pretending to do that. I completely ignored everything you said. I didn't validate your stress about the $800, and I just smashed my own completely unrelated topics into the conversation.
It made me feel like you didn't care about me at all. Now, let's rewind. Let's do the exact same scenario, but this time, Ben is going to use a natural bridge and a soft pivot to change the topic smoothly.
Take 2.
So I took my car to the mechanic yesterday because the brakes were making this weird squeaking noise, and he told me that I need to replace the entire rotor system, which is going to cost like $800.
Oh man, car repairs are the absolute worst. $800 is brutal. Do you think you're going to get a second opinion from another shop?
I think I have to. I just can't afford that right now, especially with the holidays coming up.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Speaking of the holidays, that reminds me, are you still planning on hosting the podcast crew dinner at your place next month?
Oh, yes! Actually, I was just looking at recipes for that.
And scene. Look at how beautifully that flowed.
It was perfect. Ben started by validating my pain. He said, car repairs the worst. Then he asked a relevant follow-up question about getting a second opinion.
I stayed in her topic for one more turn. Then, when she mentioned the keyword holidays, I grabbed it. I used the natural bridge.
And he combined it with a soft pivot. He said, "Speaking of the holidays, that reminds me." And suddenly, we were happily talking about a fun dinner party instead of my expensive broken car.
It's conversational magic. You can steer the ship anywhere you want to go as long as you use the right transitional words.
Mastering these pivots is what separates intermediate speakers from advanced, highly charismatic communicators. It proves that you're in complete control of the language.
Which brings us to your mission for Episode 7. We want you to practice steering the ship.
Your homework for this week is the Soft Pivot Challenge. Over the next 3 days, we want you to intentionally change the subject in an English conversation using one of the soft pivot phrases we taught you today.
You can use "speaking of which," "that reminds me," or "funny you should mention that." Wait for the other person to finish their thought. Find a tiny keyword, use your pivot phrase, and introduce a completely new topic.
Pay attention to how the other person reacts. Notice how they willingly follow you down the new path because you built a smooth bridge for them to cross.
After you successfully execute your soft pivot, come down into the comments section of this episode. We want a full field report.
Tell us exactly what the boring topic was. Tell us the pivot phrase you used, and tell us what the new, exciting topic was. We love reading about your conversational victories.
It's incredible to see you guys taking these tools out into the real world. You've learned how to start conversations, navigate disagreements, ask great questions, interrupt politely, and now you know how to change the channel when the show gets boring.
Your conversational engine is basically fully built. You've got all the mechanical skills to drive in heavy traffic. But there's one thing that takes a conversation from good to completely unforgettable.
And that's exactly what we're covering in our next episode. In Episode 8, we're going to dive deep into storytelling techniques.
We're going to show you how native speakers structure their anecdotes. We'll teach you how to build suspense, how to use pacing, and how to deliver a punchline so that people actually want to listen to you speak for 5 minutes straight.
Storytelling is the ultimate test of your English fluency, and we're going to give you the exact blueprint for doing it flawlessly. You absolutely won't want to miss it.
But for today, practice your transitions. Hunt for those keywords, build your natural bridges, and always avoid social whiplash.
I'm Den.
And I'm Anna. If you learned how to escape a boring conversation today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep steering this ship together. Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, learning English with us is
A piece of cake! Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on the English Chatcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Chatcast. You're tuning into Episode 8 of Module 3 of the Blueprint for Effortless English. I'm your co-host, Anne.
And I'm Anna. Welcome back, everyone. We're officially on Episode 8, which means we only have 2 more lessons left in our Conversational Engine module before we move into Module 4. This journey is just flying by.
It really is. In our last episode, Episode 7, we gave you the ultimate conversational escape routes. We taught you how to use natural bridges and soft pivots to gracefully change a boring topic without giving anyone social whiplash.
You guys have been crushing the homework. We've loved reading your comments about successfully pivoting conversations away from the weather and into actual interesting topics. You're taking control of the wheel.
But today, we're stepping up to the ultimate test of your English fluency. Up until now, we've been teaching you how to play conversational ping pong, short interactions, asking questions, and passing the microphone back and forth.
But what happens when the ping pong match stops, the spotlight shines directly on you, and you have to hold the floor for 2 or 3 minutes straight? Today, we're talking about storytelling techniques.
Before we teach you how to captivate an audience with your words, we've got our usual quick favor to ask. If you're excited to upgrade your Social Toolkit and you're finding value in this course, please hit that like button and subscribe to the English Chatcast channel.
It's the best way to support what we do here, and it helps the YouTube algorithm push this blueprint to other learners who are struggling to find their English confidence. Thank you so much for being part of this community.
Now, Anna, let's talk about the fear of storytelling. For an English learner, telling a story is arguably the most terrifying thing you can do in a social setting.
Oh, absolutely. When you ask a question or make small talk, you only have to produce 1 or 2 sentences. But when you tell a story, you're essentially performing a monologue. You have to maintain your grammar, your vocabulary, your rhythm, and your pronunciation for several minutes without a break.
And the biggest fear is that halfway through the story, you're going to forget a word, lose your train of thought, and watch the other person's eyes glaze over with boredom. It's an incredibly vulnerable position to be in.
Because of that fear, most English learners tell stories like police reports. They just list a series of chronological facts in a very flat, robotic voice. I woke up. I went to the store. I saw a dog. The dog barked. I went home.
It's factually correct, but it's completely lifeless. Native speakers don't tell stories to transfer data. We tell stories to transfer emotion. We want the listener to feel the surprise, the humor, or the frustration that we felt in that moment.
To do that, native speakers follow a very specific, invisible structure. We don't even realize we're doing it, but almost every great casual story follows a 4-part framework. We call it the narrative arc.
The 4 parts are the hook, the context, the climax, and the landing. If you master these 4 steps, you can make a story about going to the grocery store sound like an epic Hollywood movie.
Let's break down step 1, the hook. You can't just start a story out of nowhere. You have to announce to the room that a story is about to begin, and you have to give them a reason to listen.
The hook is your trailer. It's a short, punchy phrase that creates instant curiosity. If I want to tell a story about a terrible date I went on, I don't start by saying, "Last Friday I went to a restaurant."
No one cares about last Friday. Instead, Ben would use a native hook. He'd say, "You're never gonna believe what happened to me this weekend," or "I have to tell you about the absolute worst date of my entire life."
Notice how those hooks work. You're never gonna believe what happened. It's a challenge. It forces the listener's brain to engage. They immediately want to know what happened.
Another great casual hook is, "Did I tell you about the crazy thing that happened at work yesterday?" This one is brilliant because it asks a question. The listener has to say no, which officially grants you permission to take the floor and tell the story.
You can also use a theme-based hook. If the group is already talking about bad travel experiences, you can jump in and say, "Oh man, speaking of bad flights, don't even get me started on my trip to Chicago."
Don't even get me started. It's an incredibly native idiom. It means the story is so wild or frustrating that once you start talking about it, you won't be able to stop. It builds massive anticipation.
Once you've thrown the hook and grabbed their attention, you move to step 2 of the narrative arc, the context. This is where you set the scene.
But here's the trap that ruins most stories. Learners spend way too much time in the context phase. They over-explain the background details. They tell you the exact time of day, what they were wearing, and what they ate for breakfast, even when it has nothing to do with the story.
Keep the context tight. We call it the rule of 3. Who, where, and what were you doing? That's all the listener needs to picture the scene.
For example, I was in San Francisco with my sister, and we were walking down by the pier. That's it. You have the location, the characters, and the action.
Grammatically, native speakers almost always use the past continuous tense for the context. We don't say, "I walked down the street." We say, "I was walking down the street." "We were eating dinner." "I was driving to work."
The past continuous creates a moving background. It tells the listener that this was your normal, boring reality, right before the crazy thing interrupted it. It sets the stage for the action.
Which brings us to step 3, the climax. This is the main event. This is the weird, funny, or scary thing that actually happened.
To transition from the boring context to the exciting climax, native speakers rely heavily on a magic transition word. We use the word suddenly, or the phrase out of nowhere.
So we were eating dinner on the patio, and out of nowhere, this massive bird swoops down.
Now let's talk about the biggest, most powerful native secret for the climax phase. When English learners tell a story about the past, they naturally use the past tense. I saw a bird. It took my food. I yelled at it.
But when native speakers get really excited during a story, we subconsciously switch from the past tense into the present tense. Linguists call this the historical present.
It completely breaks the standard grammar rules you learned in school, but it is the ultimate tool for dramatic storytelling. We bring the past action into the present moment, so the listener feels like they're watching it happen live.
I was walking to my car, and a guy ran up to me. He looked at me, and he said he needed my keys. I told him to go away.
It's okay, but it's a bit distant. Now listen to the historical present version. I was walking to my car, right? And suddenly this guy runs up to me. He looks at me and he's like, "Give me your keys." And I'm like, "Get out of here, man."
Did you hear the shift? The context was past continuous. I was walking, but the climax shifted to the present. This guy runs up, he looks at me, he's like...
Using he is like and I am like instead of he said and I said is exactly what we taught you back in our filler words episode. It allows you to act out the dialogue instead of just reporting it.
The historical present adds a massive amount of speed and energy to your story. It completely removes the robotic textbook filter.
When you're in the climax, you also need to use your physical tools. Remember Module 2? This is where you use your sentence stress and your pauses.
If you're telling a suspenseful story, you slow your pacing way down. You stretch out your vowel sounds. You say, "I opened the door, and it was completely dark." The pause builds the tension.
If it's a chaotic or funny story, you speed your pacing up. You crush your words together with connected speech to mimic the frantic energy of the moment. Your rhythm has to match the emotion of the narrative.
Once you've delivered the climax, you have to wrap it up. You can't just stop talking and stare at everyone. You need step 4, the landing.
The landing is how you safely bring the airplane back down to the ground and signal to the group that your story is officially over.
A great native phrase for the ending is, long story short. This is perfect if you realized you were rambling a bit and you just need to summarize the end.
Long story short, we had to wait for a tow truck for 3 hours in the freezing cold.
You can also use the word anyway as a closing boundary. Anyway, that's how I ended up with a broken phone. It gives the story a definitive concluding sentence.
The best storytellers also include a takeaway in their landing. A takeaway is the lesson you learned or a final joke about the situation.
So, anyway, that's how I got a parking ticket. Lesson learned, I'm never parking downtown on a Tuesday again.
And the final piece of the landing is the boomerang. We taught you this in episode 5. When your story's over, you have to throw the microphone back to the group so the conversation doesn't die.
You finish your story about the parking ticket, and then you ask the group, have you guys ever been towed in this city? Or what's the worst parking ticket you've ever gotten? You use your story as a launching pad for their stories.
Let's put this entire 4-part framework into action. Ben and I are going to role play. I'm going to tell Ben a story about a ridiculous thing that happened to me out here in California.
As Anna tells the story, I'm going to be doing my job as the listener. I'm going to be back-channeling and echoing just like we practiced. But I want you to focus entirely on Anna's structure. Listen for the hook, the context, the historical present in the climax, and the landing.
All right, here we go.
So, Anna, how was your weekend? You went up to the city, right?
Yeah, I went to San Francisco. And Ben, you're never going to believe what happened to me on Saturday afternoon. I have the craziest story.
No way. What happened?
So I was down by Fisherman's Wharf with my sister, right? It was super crowded, beautiful weather, and we were just walking along the water eating these massive bread bowls full of clam chowder.
Oh man, I love those bread bowls.
They're the best. So we're just walking and talking, minding our own business, and out of nowhere, this gigantic seagull just dive bombs me from the sky.
Wait, dive bombs you?
Literally attacks me. It swoops down, lands directly on my shoulder, and starts aggressively pecking at my bread bowl. And I'm just standing there, completely frozen, screaming my head off. And the bird is like flapping its wings right in my face.
That's absolutely terrifying. What did you do?
My sister starts swatting at it with her purse, and it finally flies away, but it managed to rip off a huge chunk of bread. It completely ruined my lunch.
Ugh, that's the worst. Those birds are fearless out there.
They're absolute monsters. So anyway, long story short, I had to throw the rest of my chowder in the trash, and we ended up just eating incredibly overpriced pizza instead. Note to self, never eat bread in the open air in San Francisco.
That's a great rule to live by. Have you ever been attacked by a bird before?
Never. It was my first time.
And scene. That was fantastic. Let's break down exactly why that story was so engaging.
I started with a massive hook. I said, "You're never going to believe what happened to me." That immediately signaled to Ben that a performance was starting.
Then she gave me the context. She kept it tight. She was at Fisherman's Wharf with her sister, and they were eating bread bowls. She used the past continuous. We were walking.
Then I transitioned to the climax using the phrase out of nowhere. And notice what I did with the grammar. I switched into the historical present.
She absolutely did. She didn't say, "The bird swooped down." She said, "This gigantic seagull dive bombs me. It lands on my shoulder. It starts pecking." The present tense verbs made the action feel incredibly fast and urgent.
I also acted out the dialogue using the word like. I said, "The bird is like flapping its wings," and I'm screaming. I used my tone of voice to show the panic.
When the action was over, she executed a flawless landing. She used the boundary phrase, "long story short," to summarize the end of the lunch.
I delivered my takeaway, note to self, never eat bread in the open air, and Ben helped me out with the boomerang by asking if I'd ever been attacked before, which kept the conversation flowing naturally.
It's a formula: hook, context, climax, landing. When you structure your stories this way, you take the listener on a perfectly guided emotional journey.
And more importantly, having a framework completely removes the panic for you, the speaker. When you know exactly what step of the story you're in, you don't lose your train of thought. You just follow the map.
If you feel yourself rambling during the context, your brain knows to just say the word "suddenly" and jump right into the action. If you don't know how to finish the story, your brain knows to just say "long story short" and wrap it up.
The framework acts as your conversational safety net. It frees up your mental energy so you can actually focus on your pronunciation and your facial expressions.
Which brings us to your mission for Episode 8. It's time for you to take the floor and perform a monologue.
Your homework for this week is the 1-minute story audit. We want you to take out your phone, open the Voice Memo app, and record yourself telling a 1-minute story in English.
It doesn't have to be a crazy story. It can be about a frustrating drive to work, a funny thing your kid did, or a weird interaction at the grocery store. But you must use the 4-part framework.
Start with a hook. You'll never believe what happened. Give 15 seconds of context using the past continuous, use the phrase "out of nowhere," and switch into the historical present for the climax.
Long story short, and a lesson learned? Long story short, I need to learn to be more careful with my belongings.
Come down into the comments section of this episode and tell us what your story was about. Tell us what your hook was and what phrase you used for your landing.
We want to see how you guys are constructing your narratives. Being able to tell a captivating story in a second language is a massive milestone. It's the ultimate proof that you're no longer just translating words in your head.
You're officially generating culture and sharing emotion. Your social toolkit is incredibly powerful right now. You can chat, ask, follow up, interrupt, pivot, and tell stories.
But there's one final advanced level of conversation we need to conquer before we wrap up Module 3. We've talked about simple opinions, but what happens when the topic gets deep?
In our next episode, Episode 9, we're going to talk about expressing complex opinions. We're going to show you how to navigate deep, philosophical, or professional discussions without getting lost in the vocabulary.
We'll teach you how to structure a strong argument, how to concede a point politely, and how to sound like an absolute intellectual powerhouse in English. You won't want to miss it.
But for today, focus on your narrative arc. Throw the hook, set the scene, bring the action into the present, and stick the landing.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Anna. If you feel ready to tell a captivating story in English today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's master the art of storytelling together. Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, learning English with us is
a piece of cake. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on the English Chatcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Chatcast. You're tuning in to Episode 9 of Module 3 of the Blueprint for Effortless English. I'm your co-host, Ben.
And I'm Anna. Welcome back, everyone. I honestly cannot believe we are already at episode 9. We are rapidly approaching the end of the Conversational Engine module. It feels like just yesterday we were talking about filler words in episode 1.
It really does. You guys have built an absolute powerhouse of a social toolkit over the last 8 episodes. You know how to start small talk, how to politely disagree, how to navigate messy interruptions, and how to tell a captivating story.
You have mastered the ping-pong match of casual social interaction. But today, we need to talk about what happens when the conversation goes past the shallow end of the pool. Today, we are diving into deep water. We are talking about expressing complex opinions.
Before we teach you how to sound like an absolute intellectual powerhouse in English, we have our usual quick favor to ask. If you are excited to master deep conversations and you have been enjoying this 50-episode journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the English Chatcast channel.
Your support is everything to us. It helps the YouTube algorithm push this blueprint to other learners who are stuck on the intermediate plateau and ready to finally sound native. Thank you so much for being here.
Now, Anna, let's talk about the wall that so many advanced learners hit. You can order coffee perfectly, you can tell a funny story about your weekend, but the second the topic changes to something abstract, like the economy, artificial intelligence, or workplace psychology, you completely freeze.
It is so common. I see it with my students all the time out here in California. When the topic gets serious or philosophical, their brain suddenly tells them that they need to sound like a university professor.
Exactly. They panic and they immediately revert back to the academic writing they learned in their traditional English classes. They start trying to use transition words like furthermore, moreover, nevertheless, and in conclusion.
And the result is that they sound incredibly robotic. If we are sitting at a pub having a beer and talking about the impact of social media, and you look at me and say, furthermore, the societal implications are highly detrimental, I am going to think you are reading from a textbook.
Spoken English, even when discussing incredibly complex or intellectual topics, is still casual. It is still messy. Native speakers do not talk like academic essays. We use completely different frameworks to express deep thoughts.
Today, we are going to teach you the 4-step framework for expressing a complex opinion naturally. If you master this, you will be able to debate business strategies, politics, and philosophy with total confidence without ever needing the word moreover again.
Let's break it down. Step 1 is what we call the soft opener. When you are about to drop a heavy, complex opinion onto the table, you do not want to state it as an absolute, undeniable fact. That comes across as very aggressive and arrogant.
Right. You do not want to say, the new corporate policy is a complete disaster, and it will fail. That is a brick wall. Instead, you need to frame it subjectively. You need to remind the listener that this is simply the world according to your brain.
We use specific phrases to create this cushion. The absolute best native phrase for this is, the way I look at it.
I love that phrase, the way I look at it. It immediately lowers the defensive walls of the person listening. You are saying, hey, this is just my specific angle of vision. The way I look at it, this new corporate policy is going to cause a lot of friction.
Another incredibly common soft opener is, my take on this is. A take is a casual slang term for a perspective or an opinion. You will hear this in business meetings all the time back in Colorado. What is your take on the new budget? Well, my take on this is that we are spending way too much on marketing.
You can also use the phrase, from where I am sitting. This is a great idiomatic expression. From where I am sitting, the remote work transition has been really bad for team culture. It paints a picture of your personal viewpoint.
So you start with your soft opener. The way I look at it. Now you move to step 2 of the framework, which is the core thesis.
The core thesis is the actual point you are trying to make, and the golden rule here is simplicity. The biggest mistake learners make is trying to cram 5 different ideas into one massive, endless sentence.
Your brain is trying to translate a very complex thought from your native language into English, and you end up creating a grammar maze that you cannot escape from. You get halfway through the sentence, forget your subject, and crash.
To fix this, you have to distill your complex opinion down to one simple, punchy sentence. You have to find the absolute bottom line of your argument.
And to introduce that simple sentence, we use the magic phrase, "It basically comes down to."
It basically comes down to. That phrase is an absolute lifesaver. It tells the listener that you are taking a giant, messy concept and shrinking it into a bite-sized piece.
If we are discussing the massive complexities of why a startup company failed, you do not need to list 20 financial reasons. You use your soft opener and then your thesis. You say, "My take on this is, it basically comes down to poor leadership."
Boom! It is so powerful. Or you could use the phrase, "at the end of the day." At the end of the day, people just want to feel valued at work. It cuts through all the noise and delivers your main point cleanly.
Now that you have delivered your core thesis, you have to prove it. You have to explain why you hold this opinion. This brings us to step 3 of the framework. We call it the real-world anchor.
This is where native speakers shine and where learners usually struggle. When native speakers talk about abstract concepts, we do not stay in the clouds. We immediately anchor the abstract idea to a concrete, real-world example.
We use analogies. We compare the complex thing to a very simple everyday thing, so the listener can instantly visualize what we mean.
And the phrase we use to introduce this analogy is simply, "It is kind of like."
It is kind of like. It is so casual, but it does so much heavy lifting. Let's say you are trying to explain a complex economic concept like inflation to a friend. You deliver your thesis. At the end of the day, our money is losing value.
Then you use the anchor. It is kind of like going to the grocery store and realizing the cereal box is suddenly half the size it was last year, but you are still paying the exact same price.
You took an abstract global concept and anchored it to a box of cereal. Suddenly, your deep opinion makes perfect sense to everyone in the room.
Let's do another example. You are arguing that artificial intelligence is moving too fast for society to adapt. That is your thesis. Now, anchor it.
It is kind of like building an incredibly fast sports car, but forgetting to install the brakes before you put it on the highway.
It is a brilliant analogy. When you use it, it's kind of like you completely bypass the need for advanced academic vocabulary. You just use everyday words to paint a clear picture.
So we have the soft opener, the core thesis, and the real-world anchor. You have successfully presented a deep opinion. But if you stop there, you just sound like someone delivering a lecture. To sound truly fluent and truly intelligent, you need step 4.
Step 4 is the secret weapon of advanced English. We call it the concession.
Conceding a point means you intentionally acknowledge the opposing side of the argument. You admit that your opinion is not flawless and that the other perspective has some validity.
In academic writing, you might say, "However, one must acknowledge the alternative viewpoint." In spoken English, we use a much smoother transition. We use the phrase, "having said that."
Having said that, it is the ultimate pivot. It means, despite all the strong points I just made, I still recognize this other truth.
Let's go back to the remote work debate.
You just gave a brilliant argument about why working from home is better. You say, the way I look at it, remote work basically comes down to trusting your employees. It is kind of like treating people like adults instead of children.
That is a strong argument. Now add the concession. Having said that, I do completely understand why managers feel anxious when they cannot physically see their team collaborating.
Do you hear how much more sophisticated that sounds? By validating the opposing fear, you actually make your own argument stronger. You prove that you are not blindly biased. You prove that you see the whole picture.
Another fantastic phrase for conceding is to be fair. To be fair is used to inject a dose of realistic sympathy into your argument.
You might be criticizing a movie for having a terrible script. You tear it apart. Then you say, to be fair, the special effects team did an absolutely incredible job. It balances the negativity.
Let's review the 4 steps before we put them into action. Step 1, the soft opener, the way I look at it. Step 2, the core thesis. It basically comes down to. Step 3, the real-world anchor. It is kind of like. And step 4, the concession. Having said that,
If you string those 4 pieces together, you can talk about quantum physics or global politics, and you will sound like a native-speaking thought leader.
Let's demonstrate this with a deep role play. Anna and I are going to have a complex discussion about social media. I am going to ask Anna for her opinion, and I want you to listen carefully as she navigates all 4 steps of the framework perfectly.
I am ready. Throw me the deep question.
So, Anna, there's a lot of talk right now about how much time people spend on their phones. Do you think social media is actually ruining our ability to connect with people in the real world, or is that just an overreaction?
Well, the way I look at it, social media itself is not the enemy. It basically comes down to how intentional you are with your consumption.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it is kind of like junk food. If you eat a candy bar once a week, it is totally fine and enjoyable. But if you eat nothing but candy bars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you are going to feel terrible and your health will crash. Social media is the exact same way. If you binge it constantly, it isolates you.
That is a really great way to put it.
Having said that, I completely recognize how difficult it is to be intentional when these apps are literally engineered by psychologists to be as addictive as humanly possible. It is an uphill battle.
And scene. That was a masterclass in expressing a complex opinion. Let's break down exactly what Anna did.
I didn't start by saying social media is good or bad. I used the soft opener. I said, the way I look at it, to frame it as my personal perspective.
Then she delivered a perfectly simple core thesis. She didn't use the word furthermore, she used our magic phrase. It basically comes down to how intentional you are.
But intentional consumption is an abstract concept. I needed Ben to visualize it, so I used the real-world anchor. I said, it is kind of like junk food. Everyone understands the concept of eating too much junk food.
The analogy made her point completely bulletproof, but she didn't stop there. She recognized that her junk food analogy made it sound a little too easy to just put the phone down.
Right. I needed to acknowledge the reality that these apps are addictive, so I used the concession. I said, having said that, I recognize how difficult it is to fight the algorithm.
By using having said that, she proved she is an empathetic, nuanced thinker. The entire argument was incredibly intelligent, but she never once sounded like she was reading from a textbook. It flowed naturally.
When you use this framework, you completely remove the pressure of finding the perfect academic vocabulary word. You rely on structure instead of a dictionary.
It gives you a roadmap for your brain to follow when the topics get heavy. You know exactly how to start, how to simplify, how to explain, and how to balance your thought.
Which brings us to your mission for Episode 9. It is time for you to tackle a complex topic out in the real world.
Your homework for this week is the Nuance Challenge. Over the next few days, we want you to engage in a conversation about a slightly deeper topic. It could be about an industry trend at work, a piece of news, or a philosophical debate with a friend.
Your goal is to successfully execute Step 4 of our framework. We want you to forcefully state an opinion and then immediately concede a point to the other side using the phrase, "having said that," or the phrase, "to be fair."
Watch what happens to the energy of the conversation when you concede a point. Notice how the other person's eyes light up and how much more willing they are to listen to your side of the argument because you validated theirs first.
It is the ultimate diplomatic tool. After you deploy your concession phrase, come down into the comments section of this episode. Give us your field report.
Tell us what the complex topic was, tell us your core thesis, and tell us exactly what point you conceded using "having said that." We want to see your intellectual debates.
You guys are absolutely crushing this module. We have built the car, we have tuned the engine, and now you know how to drive it through both the easy neighborhoods and the deep, complex highways of human conversation.
Your Social Toolkit is officially fully stocked. You are ready for anything a native speaker throws your way.
But before we officially close the book on Module 3 and move on to our next massive topic in Module 4, we need to take a breath and put all of these puzzle pieces together.
That is exactly what we are doing in our next episode. Episode 10 is our grand finale for this section. It is the summary of the Social Toolkit.
We are going to review every single conversational hack we have taught you over the last 9 episodes. We will tie the filler words, the small talk, the storytelling, and the complex opinions into one cohesive, unstoppable conversational strategy.
It is going to be the ultimate review session, and it will solidify everything you have learned so you never forget it in a real-world scenario. You absolutely will not want to miss it.
But for today, focus on your deep opinions. Give us your soft openers, anchor your thoughts in the real world, and always remember to concede a point for nuance.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Anna. If you feel ready to tackle complex topics in English today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep building that conversational engine. Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, learning English with us is
a piece of cake. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on the English Chatcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Chatcast. You are tuning in to Episode 10 of Module 3 of the Blueprint for Effortless English. I am your co-host, Ben.
And I am Anna. Welcome back, everyone. Take a deep breath and look at how far you have come. Today is a massive milestone. This is the finale of Module 3, which means we have officially completed 30 out of our 50 episodes.
It is absolutely incredible. When we started this journey back in Module 1, we asked you to completely change how your brain processes English. We broke your translation habits. Then, in Module 2, we rebuilt your physical muscle memory so you could master the rhythm of the language.
And over the last 9 episodes here in Module 3, we gave you the conversational engine. We took you out of the classroom and put you directly into the messy, chaotic, beautiful world of native social interaction.
Today is all about putting the puzzle pieces together. In this episode, Summary, the Social Toolkit, we are going completely holistic. We are going to review the core tools you learned, but more importantly, we are going to show you how they all connect to make you an unstoppable communicator.
Before we dive into our grand finale review, we have one last favor to ask for this module. If this conversational toolkit has helped you feel more confident speaking English in the real world, please hit that like button and subscribe to the English Chatcast channel.
Your support keeps the lights on in the studio and helps us reach thousands of other learners who are ready to break through the intermediate plateau. Thank you for being the absolute best community on the internet.
Okay, Ben, let us open up the toolkit. When we built this module, we deliberately designed it like a roadmap. We started with the smallest, most foundational pieces of conversation, and we slowly worked our way up to the deepest, most complex structures.
Right, and it all started in episode 1 with the glue, the lexical filler words. We told you to embrace the messiness. We gave you permission to use words like well, I mean, you know, actually, and like.
Those filler words were your first taste of freedom. You stopped trying to speak with perfect robotic grammar, and you started using those words to buy yourself time to think, to soften your statements, and to show empathy to the listener.
And once you had the glue, you were ready to build the bridge. In episode 2, we tackled the monster that terrifies everyone, small talk.
We shattered the illusion that small talk is just a boring exchange of facts. We taught you that it is actually a crucial social trust exercise. It is the ping pong match where you prove to the other person that you are friendly and safe.
We threw away the robotic I am fine and we replaced it with natural greetings like surviving or pretty good, thanks. And we taught you the golden rule of small talk, which is returning the serve. You always have to ask a question back to keep the ball in the air.
And to make sure you never ran out of things to ask, we gave you the FORD method: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. If your brain ever goes blank in an elevator, you just scan those 4 letters and you instantly have a safe, engaging topic.
But conversation is not always perfectly smooth. In episode 3, we had to address the friction. We talked about agreeing and disagreeing naturally.
We taught you how to stop saying the harsh, confrontational phrase, I disagree. Instead, we gave you the ultimate diplomatic shield, the yes, but method. You learned how to validate the other person's point first by saying, I see what you mean, and then pivoting to your opinion with the word but.
We also gave you the exit strategies for when an argument gets stuck. You learned how to say fair enough and let us agree to disagree to gracefully close a debate without destroying the relationship.
Once you knew how to handle the friction, we decided to take the pressure completely off of your grammar. In episode 4, we taught you the ultimate conversational hack: asking better questions.
We showed you how to pass the microphone to the native speaker so they could do all the heavy lifting. We banned closed yes or no questions, and we introduced the TED framework: tell me, explain, describe.
Starting your questions with those 3 words forces the other person to tell a story instead of just giving you a one-word answer. And we taught you how to use hypothetical questions like, what would you do if, to spark really fun, imaginative conversations.
But passing the microphone created a new problem. What do you do when they finish answering your brilliant question and they pass the microphone back to you? That was episode 5, the art of the follow-up.
This was a huge turning point in the module. We taught you how to be an active listener. You learned that in English, you cannot just sit in silence while someone talks. You have to back-channel. You have to say, yeah, right, and wow, to show you are engaged.
And when they finish their story, you validate their emotion. You say, that sounds so frustrating. Then you deploy the psychological cheat code known as the echo. You just repeat their last 3 words as a question, and they immediately start talking again.
We also warned you about becoming a conversation thief, and we taught you the boomerang technique. You share a tiny, relatable link from your own life, but then you throw the boomerang right back to them with a new question to keep them in the spotlight.
That 5-episode stretch gave you perfect conversational manners. But in episode 6, we had to teach you how to fight for your life in a chaotic group setting. We talked about navigating interruptions.
We explained the concept of cooperative overlap. We showed you that native speakers talking over each other is actually a sign of excitement, not disrespect. And we gave you the double tap to pierce through the noise.
You learned how to raise your volume, say the person's name, and use a minimizing phrase, like, "Can I just jump in here really quickly?" And you learned how to defend your own turn with the phrase, "Just let me finish this thought."
Then, in episode 7, we put you in the driver's seat. We taught you how to change the topic smoothly so you could escape boring conversations without causing social whiplash.
You learned how to hunt for keywords to build a natural bridge. You learned soft pivots like "speaking of which" and "that reminds me." And you learned hard pivots like not to change the subject, but you gained total control over the steering wheel.
With that control, we moved to episode 8, which was the ultimate test of your fluency, storytelling techniques.
We taught you the 4-part narrative arc. You learned how to throw a hook, like "you will never believe what happened." You kept your context tight using the past continuous.
And the biggest secret of all, you learned how to switch into the historical present tense during the climax to make the action feel incredibly fast and urgent. And you brought it all home with a smooth landing phrase like "long story short."
Finally, in episode 9, we took all of that casual energy and applied it to deep intellectual topics. We taught you how to express complex opinions without sounding like a robotic university professor.
You learned how to use soft openers like "the way I look at it." You simplified your thesis with the phrase "it basically comes down to." You anchored your abstract thoughts to the real world using analogies, starting with "it is kind of like."
And you learned the absolute highest level of conversational diplomacy, the concession. You learned to use the phrase "having said that" to validate the opposing side and make yourself sound incredibly nuanced and intelligent.
That is the entire Social Toolkit. It is a massive amount of information. But here is the secret. You do not have to memorize this like a textbook. These are not rigid rules. They are overlapping tools.
In a real 20-minute conversation with a native speaker, you're going to use almost every single one of these tools simultaneously. You'll start with small talk, use filler words, ask an open question, echo their response, soft pivot to a new topic, tell a quick story, and then express an opinion.
It becomes a dance. And to prove it to you, Ben and I are going to do something we have never done before. We are going to do a master role play.
We are going to have a completely unscripted sounding natural conversation for about 3 minutes. We are going to intentionally weave together the tools from all 9 episodes.
I want you to listen actively. Treat this like an audit. See how many tools you can identify as we speak. Listen for the filler words, the TED questions, the bridges, the interruptions, and the concessions.
Let us set the scene. Anna and I are grabbing a coffee on a Monday morning before heading into the studio. I will kick things off with the opening serve.
Let us do it.
Hey, Anna, how's it going? You survived the weekend?
Oh, barely surviving, to be honest, but pretty good overall. How about you? Did you end up going on that hike up in the mountains you were talking about?
Actually, yeah, I did. But you will never believe what happened. The weather forecast was completely wrong.
No way. What happened?
So I was driving up the pass, right? And it was super sunny. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the sky just turns black and it starts dumping snow. Literally a blizzard in the middle of October. I had to turn the car around and basically crawl back down the mountain at 10 miles an hour.
10 miles an hour?
Yeah, it was terrifying. Long story short, my hiking trip turned into me just sitting on my couch watching Netflix all weekend.
Wow, that sounds incredibly frustrating, especially when you were looking forward to getting outside. But hey, Netflix is not the worst backup plan. Speaking of which, describe that new documentary series you told me about last week. Is it actually worth watching?
Oh, the true crime one? Yeah, totally. It is fascinating. It basically comes down to how digital footprints can track everything we do. It is kind of like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs everywhere you go on the internet.
Right.
But Ben, can I just jump in here for a second?
Sure, what is up?
Not to change the subject, but did you get an email from the building manager this morning about the parking lot repaving?
Hold that thought. Let me just finish this point about the documentary really quickly.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. I was just going to say, the way I look at it, the digital tracking is terrifying, but it also solves a ton of cold cases. Having said that, I completely agree that our privacy is basically gone. Anyway, what were you saying about the parking lot?
Oh, right. Yeah, they are repaving the whole lot tomorrow, so we have to park 3 blocks away on Elm Street for the rest of the week.
You are kidding! I know, right? They always do this stuff without giving us any real notice. It is so annoying.
For sure, it is a total headache. Well, I should probably get in there and start setting up the microphones.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us get to work.
And scene. That was it. That was the entire conversational engine firing on all cylinders.
It felt incredibly fast and dynamic. Let us quickly break down exactly what happened so you can see the matrix.
We opened with small talk. I used the surviving greeting, and Anna returned the serve with a Ford method hook about my recreation, the hike.
Ben used a story hook. You will never believe what happened. He used the historical present for the climax of the blizzard and wrapped it up with, long story short.
While I was talking, Anna was back-channeling. She said, no way. And then she used the echo. She said, 10 miles an hour? That forced me to add more detail.
After the story, I validated his frustration. Then I used a soft pivot. I said, speaking of which, and I used the TED framework to ask an open question. Describe that new documentary.
I used the complex opinion framework to answer. I said it basically comes down to digital footprints, and I anchored it with an analogy. It is kind of like leaving breadcrumbs.
Then I intentionally used the double tap to interrupt him. I said his name and asked to jump in. I used a hard pivot, not to change the subject, to bring up the parking lot.
But I was feeling assertive, so I defended my floor. I said, hold that thought. Let me finish this point.
I finished my opinion, used a concession by saying, having said that, and then I used the ultimate bridge. Anyway, what were you saying about the parking lot?
I delivered the bad news. Anna agreed naturally by saying, I know, right? And then I used the pre-closing exit strategy. I stretched out the word well and said, I should probably get to work.
We fit the entire module into 3 minutes of dialogue, and it sounded completely natural. Nobody sounded rude, nobody sounded robotic, and nobody got stuck in an awkward silence.
That is the power of the blueprint you have just completed. You are no longer just memorizing vocabulary words and grammar rules. You are managing the flow of human energy. You are directing the orchestra.
Which brings us to your final mission for Module 3. This is not a specific technique challenge. This is a mindset challenge.
Your homework for this week is the conversation audit. The next time you are in a social setting, or watching a movie, or listening to a podcast in English, I want you to actively look for the tools.
Stop listening purely for the definition of words and start listening to the mechanics. Watch how native speakers interrupt each other. Watch how they pivot. Watch how they cushion their opinions.
Once you can see the matrix, you can manipulate it. You will realize that native speakers are not performing magic. They are just using a very specific set of tools that you now possess.
Take a moment today to be incredibly proud of yourself. You have conquered the mental block. You have conquered the physical rhythm. And now you have conquered the social anxiety. You are ready to thrive out there.
But, of course, the blueprint is not quite finished. We have 30 episodes down, but we have 20 left to go. And now that you can drive the car in casual traffic, it is time to take it to the professional racetrack.
Oh, this is going to be amazing. In Module 4, we are introducing Mastering the Nuance. We are going to take everything you learned in the conversational engine and apply it to high-stakes, professional, and culturally sensitive environments.
We are going to talk about networking like a boss, running meetings, giving presentations, and navigating the incredibly subtle cultural codes of the English-speaking workplace. It is going to give you the ultimate professional polish.
You have built the foundation, and now it is time to build the skyscraper. You absolutely will not want to miss the kickoff of Module 4.
But for today, celebrate your massive victory. Review your notes, trust your new instincts, and get out there and start some messy, beautiful conversations.
I am Anna.
And I am Ben.
If you are proud to have finished Module 3 and you are ready for the professional polish of Module 4, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We are so grateful to have you on this journey.
Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, learning English with us is
a piece of cake. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on the English Chatcast.